SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. My name is Todd Kirk. I am your host, and I am joined today by a wonderful guest and my ever-present co-host, Kristi Trujillo. Hey, Kristi, we're glad to have you here, as always.
What's going on, TK?
Hey, all I can say is I'm really excited about this episode. Today, we have a phenomenal guest on, Kristi Faltorusso, who is the Chief Customer Officer for ClientSuccess.com. We love Kristi. We love ClientSuccess.com, and we are pumped to have her on the program. So, Kristi, welcome to SaaS Therapy.
I'm excited. You know, any podcast title that has therapy in it, I think you might be inviting a very interesting conversation, but I'm excited to see where today goes.
Well, you never know. It can get off the rails pretty quickly.
And I'm here for that. Like I'm signed up for that part of it. Like the SaaS part, okay, but I'm more here for the therapy.
Oh, good. Well, that's a great segue for you, Casey, because I don't even know if Kristi knows what's coming. So
Kristi, I mean, you have a wonderful impact in the community, whether it be with customer success, whether it be with onboarding. People follow you. So many people follow you. You don't following Kristi right now. Get on there, start to follow her. But let's get into your mind just a little bit more. So we play this game called This or That. So some lighthearted questions, but it allows us to know a little bit more about you. Because, I mean, we always see you buttoned up. We always see you like running like 20 miles and then coming home and then giving some inspirational thought about CS, right? So we're going to give you a little bit of questions to get to know you a little bit more. So first question, are you someone that would like to be rich and famous or rich and unknown?
Oh, I'm a rich and famous. My husband would be rich and unknown. He'd win the lotto and like never talk to anyone again, like just move far, far away and like fall off the I need to be known. I'd actually be poor and unknown. No, poor and known. Yes.
I love it. Okay, I don't think you watch a lot of TV, so you could say pass on this question. This is okay. But would you rather watch reruns of Friends or Seinfeld?
Oh, I did both recently. I watched both series from start to finish just recently with my husband. So I'm going to say Seinfeld, just because I feel like it's always going to give me a laugh, right? Like Friends can have an emotional roller coaster. That's fine every once in a while. But Seinfeld is always going to be witty and bring humor and banter and discomfort. And I'm just like, I'm here for that. So I'm going to go Seinfeld.
Love it. I love it. I mean, you can't really go wrong in either one of those. Last one, are you someone that loves to go on vacation or someone that likes to vacation at home? You a staycation person or travel the world vacation person?
What I like versus what I do are different. Okay, so like I wouldn't mind going on vacation, but I don't want to do touristy vacation. Like that's not for me. Like I don't want to go see things and like spend my week like hiking and climbing and viewing, and I don't want to do that. I get so few vacations that like I would go away on vacation if I could like sit on a beach or like lay out by a pool. Like I want to relax on a vacation. So if you're telling me I got to go away, but I'm going to go like work, then no, I'm staying home. So like it has to be relaxing.
That's amazing. I learned so much about you in that. Thank you. That is fantastic.
Now, Kristi, I don't usually join in on this part, but because we were talking before the show and I feel like you gave me a nugget, now I have to add in my own this or that question.
Okay, let's go.
Which is, would you rather spend 5 hours lost in the woods by yourself trying to survive, or would you rather be stuck in New York traffic for 5 hours by yourself?
Oh, that is brutal. Okay, I'm going to be stuck in my car in traffic. You want to know why? Because I'll have my music and I can sing along. I can call somebody. Like, no, I know where I'm going. Like, there is a destination I'm headed towards. If I'm lost in the woods, like, I have no sense of direction. Like, I don't have any sense of direction. I'll be walking in a circle. That won't be 5 hours. That would be literally 100 hours in the woods. Like, I'm not getting out. I die in the woods. So I'm going to stay in my car because I have a higher likelihood of survival.
Todd, well done. Good question. No, I gotta get some therapy in for myself before we get started because it's not often you get someone of Kristi's caliber on. I want to know, Kristi, how do you do everything? You are the CCO. You do some consulting. You are consistent on LinkedIn and giving value adds to people. I know you love to run. I know you love to run with your husband. You're entering into all these different meetings. You're just coming back from your daughter's science camp or physics camp or something like that, and driving her there and coming back. How do you fit it all in? How do you do it? And I think it might be a good segue to what we're talking about today with onboarding, because there's so many things to do. But how do you prioritize your life? Give us maybe one or two tips and tricks of your productivity and how you do it.
Well, you named it. You nailed it right there, right? It's ruthless prioritization. First, I think it's just like having a good set of like, what are your core values and what is the most important thing to you? For me, it's always going to be my family. Then it will always be fitness, my health and my fitness. And then it's my career, right? And obviously I kind of put my friends in there with my family. I kind of consider them one and the same. My friend group is so small at this age in life that they might as well be family. So it's prioritizing those things that are most important to me. And like when you have ruthless prioritization, you accommodate, right? And there's no such thing as balance. I don't believe in that. Like, I don't think that there is perfect balance. Because some days, like this week, I am prioritizing my daughter. She's got physics camp this week. She got accepted into this program at a university while she's still in high school. It's a big deal for us. It's going to help her with college. So this week she's being prioritized, right? So I'm adjusting my meetings all day, all night, making sure that I can get her to and from. It's an hour and a half both ways. So going there, working from the campus at the university all day, driving her home in traffic. Other days it's work stuff. We've got board meetings. We're prepping for things. We just had an acquisition at ClientSuccess. How do I manage all of that? Personnel issues. And sometimes it's me, right? Like it's the things that I need and I value. So guess what? 5:30, I'm shutting my computer at night and I'm going to go do my second workout of the day. I'm going to go get my run in. I wake up early to prioritize my fitness to make sure that there's nothing disrupting that. So it's just making all the minutes count. And I'll tell you, like, I'm an early to rise, early to bed kind of gal. Like I find the hours that work best for me and I use every minute. I don't waste time.
I don't know how to make it a natural segue, but I'm going to try anyway, Kristi, which is,
it can be an unnatural segue.
I already have done so, right? Just by being awkward. But the thing that I think is really fascinating about that point is that, on the topic of the customer journey and where they try to go, I think it's so common for a new customer who's just started with a SaaS company to immediately feel rudderless, like they don't know where to go, they don't know what to do, Yep. They don't know how to move forward. And what's even more daunting is that they tend to see all of the things that are undone that they have to work through. I got to now pull in this team to coordinate with this part of the implementation, and I got to figure out our use case here and sell it to this team, and I got to drive some sort of education and training with this department, and all of these different components that go through their heads. And I'm, so I want to steer away from the feed you the answer question, which is like, how do you do that? Which is like, let's have a prioritized plan. But I guess maybe I'd love to get your perspective on what do you think it is that makes some customers be able to do that and actually like put together a plan and see the pathway forward, and those who just get super overwhelmed and daunted thinking through all of the different things they need to accomplish?
Everyone's different, right? And everyone sees things differently. One of the things that I started doing for myself a long time ago, because I was one of those like get overwhelmed by all the things in front of me to the extent where it's like, I'm so overwhelmed, I do nothing because I'm spinning at just the fact that I have 100 things in front of me. So what I started to do is create basically my to-do list, but I'd only ever see one to do at a time. And it would only just be the next thing on my list. And my lists were always prioritized, which is cool about drag and drop functionality and all this stuff. But like being able to just see the next thing in front of me. And it's like just taking that next step, right? If I'm telling you, this is where my analogies are going to come in. You have to run a marathon. I'm going to be so overwhelmed by the 26 miles ahead of me. But if I'm only focused on that next step, I can get there. Right. And so I think the same thing is to be said for all of these things, right? Like onboarding is a great example. You've got folks who are really doing something that they've never done before. They're using a new software. They're being onboarded to it. Even if they've used a different one before, this is something new. They've got to configure it. They've got to be trained, enabled. They've got to drive change management. That in itself, to just think about what it's like to onboard technology into a business is extremely overwhelming. Doesn't matter how complex the technology is or not, because there's so much that is involved with it, because there's people, there is process. You've got this technology. So there's all these components. And then there's that change management, that behavioral change. Being able to just really break it down for folks and focus on small use cases, small projects, next steps, right? Not giving everybody this whole thing to focus on, which is where I see so many companies get it wrong, right? It's just this overwhelming approach to, we're going to go do everything. I'm going to teach you everything. We're going to consume all of this product. And I'll tell you, almost every company that takes that approach, either, even if they get the onboarding completed, the adoption will never mirror what you've just done. People are overwhelmed. People don't learn that way. So, I think it's about breaking it down simply for folks and giving them just what they need as that next step.
So what are some exercises or some questions that you offer to people that are looking at this approach? So I'm a SaaS organization. I brought on ClientSuccess, a customer success platform, right? And I'm saying, hey, Kristi, I bought this platform, but I really want to look at the whole journey. Let's start with onboarding. What are some exercises you're going to walk me through to help me prioritize what I should be doing to get my mindset in the right way? What are some things that you do? And again, obviously this is what you do in consulting and things like that, so don't give away all your tips and tricks, but if you wouldn't mind giving us just a couple starting points of where you would begin.
Listen, I think the most important thing that a lot of companies, they bypass and almost because they just don't want to commit more time to it, but figure out, what is your customer solving for, right? And I say this because if I was to onboard a customer onto ClientSuccess, I could say, we're going to go and create your success cycles and your health score, and we're going to go create all your customer segments. We're going to do all these automations. We're going to do all the reporting and engagement and tags and all. Like, there's a billion things we can configure on the platform. But if a customer came to me and said, I just need help mitigating risk for my top customers, right? If they said, we have a churn problem for my top tier customers, and I bought your software because I need help getting ahead of that, my onboarding is going to be so prescriptive to solving for that use case. We don't need to configure the whole solution. What I need to do is get their customers in there. I need to build out their customer segments. We need to configure a usable health score that's going to help me understand where there is risk, have some success cycles. That's our version of a playbook that they can deploy when there's certain risks present. Have some ways that customer success managers can come in there and enter in their data. But I would keep it very tailored and focused to, one, creating a data set that just helps me isolate around the customers that my customer told me, these are the ones we're having a problem with, making sure that I've got a way to understand what that risk is and systems and processes in place so that their team can do something about it. That's what I'm starting with, because they gave me a very specific pain. I'm going to configure to solve for that. And by doing that, I'm helping them see a first result really fast. And so when people talk about this time to value, I feel like that is such a made up idea, because I'm like, what does that even mean? Time to whose value? And it's like, what ends up happening is companies, they are the ones rushing to a timeline, right? Because the time to value isn't for their customers. It's this perceived timeline for their customers, but the real time to value is for the business, which anytime you're designing for your company and not for your customers, you're probably not going to get the outcome you want. But if you design for your customers, you will see the benefit there. So our focus is, it's not that time to value with an arbitrary time in mind, right? If it takes my customer 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 2 weeks, if I'm getting to what they need to solve for very specifically, and that's what we're focused on, getting to that initial result that solves a real pain is going to be that added benefit. And I think conceptually, that's what they mean, but that's not how they behave. And so that's the difference I'm trying to drive there, is yes, I understand your time to value conceptually is what I'm saying, but it's not what most companies are doing, right? They're creating these no, we can get you onboarded in 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 6 weeks. And it's well, what does that time mean for the customer? What are you doing in that time? How do you know that time is what's appropriate for them based off of what their needs are? If you design for them and configure a plan that is specifically focused on just solving for something small or meaningful or just impactful up front, like their main pain point, you're going to get an entirely different level of engagement from them. You're going to actually start to get that kind of that result, which will drive and continue that behavior throughout the partnership.
Kristi, I love that insight. And I think it's a really important problem that we tend to forget, right? I think we're egocentric creatures, humans are generally. And so we tend to figure out what are the things that we can do to prove that we're doing a good job. And so we end up looking at something that's not real at all, right? We create our own metrics that define, we're like, well, it's close enough. It like that we know it's not really the thing that happened, but it's close to the thing. So therefore we're going to follow that instead. And so that's why I love your point around like, they turned everything on and we trained them. So therefore we have achieved time to value.
And that's always the thing, right? It's like, let's go configure this whole platform, hit all the switches, hit all the levers, check all of our internal boxes. And once we've checked our boxes, we should feel really good and pat ourselves on the back and move on to the next thing. And it's like, at no point was any of that designed to give your customers what they need, how they need it, and when they need it. And I think that's where companies start to stumble, because you want to know why? It's not super scalable. It's not easy. It's not always repeatable. And that's why they avoid that, right? People like what they can scale, what they can measure, what's easy, because that's how you can build and scale a business. And unfortunately, when it comes to customers, it just doesn't work that way. Everyone's different. I've never had two customers come into the partnership ready and prepared the same way, or solving the same problems, or have access to the same data even, right? Like it's always something a little different. Even if there's some similarities and some frameworks we can apply here and there, my team has to be prepared in every instance to modify. So we tell our customers, okay, we're starting from here, but now we're going to build this into what it is that you actually need, right? Like, so what we say is like, we give you a plate and we're going to make this, it's a buffet. What do you need to kind of fill that void for you in your business? So if you take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, great. I've got all the pieces there. And that's actually what becomes scalable, is because all of the elements in that buffet, they're already prepared, right? They're sitting in those chafing dishes ready for somebody who's going to come in and make their plate. And that's what we do for our team. So if we say, hey, the goal is to mitigate risk, or it's to identify growth, or whatever the goal is for that customer, we know what pieces, we know how to fill our plate to help our customer achieve that.
Mm-hmm. Kristi, it sounds scary, because we just had one of the longest running podcasts out there in the CS is called the Jasons, and
yes,
one's
I've been on their show. Yep.
Yeah, Jason's
they're
out.
They're hilarious.
I love Jason Noble is one of my favorite. He's so great.
So we had this discussion about is our playbooks ruining CS, because people are just following the play. That's all they know how to do. And so we're training basically a bunch of people to follow a playbook. And I love Todd's point that he had was we're maybe treating our CS person as the player instead of our CS person as the coach, and our customer as the player. And so as a coach, I'm just helping the player run the right play that is going to unlock the goal that they have. So I'm curious on your thoughts on that, Kristi. Are playbooks in some extent hurting us because we're just following that playbook? We're just following that playbook. I loved how you said it as, hey, no, this is a buffet. I'm here to help you get the food you want on the plate. I like that approach. So what's your thoughts on that?
So I don't disagree, which means so I agree. The thing about playbooks is, right? I'm like let me, I know my double negatives. Okay. So I agree on the fact that like playbooks, I do think can be prohibitive in running the right motions at the right time with the right customers. The way that I view them and the way that I have designed them almost always at every company I've been at is in a very flexible manner, right? There's always some core tenets to things that you need to do, right? Like when there is an M&A in your customer, which could actually, it could be risky or it could be a huge opportunity depending on what's happening, right? Are they being merged? Is one company acquiring the other? What's being deprecated? Are both customers, right? Like there's so many nuances to that. But there's certain things you'll have to do, right? Up front, you have to do the research. You have to answer certain questions, right? Like who's the acquiring company? Who is getting acquired? Are both customers, right? Like you have to go and do some due diligence. That is a standard motion that you'd always run in an M&A. Now, I've already said there could be a couple different outcomes, right? Your customer could be acquired. They could be the acquiring company. It could be two of your customers coming together, right? All three of those just scenarios, and those aren't even all of the scenarios, would all have a different sequence of next steps following that, right? So how could I have one generic playbook that says, go do these things? Because if I ran the same motion in all three of those scenarios I've just described, well, 2 out of 3 times I'm going to be doing the wrong thing. And so the problem is that we are trying to disempower humans to understand what is appropriate what should we be doing? And like, what kills me is I don't know about everybody else, but I try to hire smart people, and I want to empower the people that are on my teams to do what they know to do based off of their engagement with the customer, right? They should know, or I could or should be coaching them. Like, here's all 3 scenarios, or here's these different things. I should be teaching them. But at the end of the day, let them do what's right based on the situation that's in front of them. When we follow these prescriptive playbooks, oftentimes, again, it's not a one size fits all. It's not even a one size fits most in a lot of our customers. So have some core tenets of things that need to get done, but do not over prescribe each task and activity in a sequence that could be really the wrong thing to be doing in any of those situations. So I don't know. I like playbooks directionally. I think they're helpful. I think onboarding, renewals, I definitely over prescribe on my playbooks 100% of the time. Always. They are the longest playbooks that I ever have, onboarding and renewals, because those do require certain steps to happen, and we don't want to miss some of those steps. But everything in between, it's kind of like, do these 3 or 4 things and then like use your best judgment, or like consult your manager, or like do this research and find out like if this then. Unless you have playbooks that have super crazy logic built in, I don't know. I think they can kill a situation.
It's so good, Kristi. I mean, of course you'd have a great answer for that, and I love it. The part that I think is interesting in this conversation, though, is the fact that you started with something that really caught my attention. I think this is really good, which is, every customer is different, and the things that they want are different. When you're trying to figure out in those beginning stages, how do I get them to achieve some first result as quickly as possible, and give them confidence that they're heading in the right direction. So one of the things you said was, they're all so different. And so one of the things that I think that's interesting is like, okay, well, client success is an example. You have a very core value proposition, which is track your customers, help them succeed, and prevent them from churning. But I think about something like a whiteboarding software, where it's like the team that's going to use it and the thing that they want to achieve with it. I mean, you're just talking like wide open spaces. All we know is the goal they want is to collaborate more. And so like, I'm curious from your perspective, given the fact that so many SaaS companies are in have different structures, and their ideal customer and the profile of that customer can be so different in various situations. How do you adjust based off of like, man, I got to make sure I guess maybe I'll put it this way. If your customer is really cut and dry, maybe this is really straightforward. But what do you do when the use cases and the scenarios and the value the customer wants to achieve are vastly different? So what do you do to try to make that more scalable and approachable?
Todd, that was the longest question.
It was,
but he got there. And I understood it. So I think we're good. We're gonna see if I answer the right question, then we'll know he nailed it. If I'm answering the wrong question, guys, just like hit the red buzzer and stop me, and then that's Todd's fault.
And Kristi and I both looked at each other, and we started singing "Wide Open Spaces" by the Chicks in our head. Also, just so you're aware, we had a moment where we started singing together.
Kristi was totally engaged. That was just you, Casey. So.
Okay, so here's my thought. This is where I think so many companies get it wrong, though, is the upfront, the really kind of identifying what those use cases and pain points are with your customer, right? People abandon that conversation so fast when a customer isn't ready at the drop of a dime to answer it. Because I think everyone is again, I'm going to say this 100 times, everyone is well-intentioned. Everyone wants to get it right, but so few people are approaching it the right way. So you'll have a CSM, go to that initial conversation. What are your goals? That might be the question. And then they sit there and everyone looks at each other awkwardly because no one can articulate it. It's too big. It's too broad of a question. And so what I coach our team on is like at ClientSuccess. Now you're right. We're not a whiteboarding software. So my use cases are not infinite. But what I have done as a leader, and I would encourage all leaders to do this, doesn't matter what your software is, it's still the right way to do this, or it's one right way. I don't ever think that mine is the only way. But what we've done is we've come up with, like, for ClientSuccess, which is a customer success management software, we've come up with 7 core objectives. And these are the 7 main reasons why someone might buy customer success software. And the reason I know this is because I bought customer success software for a decade before coming to ClientSuccess. And every time I did, I had to go to a CEO and a CFO and say, this is why I need this. This is what it's going to help me do. And every time I got budget. So I know that it works. I know that these are the right 7. I've vetted it. Nobody come up with an 8th one, so we're good. But why I say that is because I have a way to approach a conversation with my customer that says, these are the 7 things that you might want to do with client success. And it's like democratize data, increase visibility, mitigate risk, right? They're the 7 things. And then when they say like, oh, okay, well, I want to do all of these. And it's like, of course you do. Everyone wants to do all of them. We're going to get there. Stack rank. What's your number 1? Today, if I asked you, which one of these is going to help you in your job today, solve a problem for your business? What is it? And then they'll pick one. Great. And then I can go from there. And I've teed up a line of questions that my CSMs can ask to uncover with their customer what the specific goal is, right? And so we can drill down in a way that helps us get to something. Now, like I said, we've designed this such that we can have the right conversation and ask the right questions where we don't feel like, one, the customer is getting frustrated or mad or like can't answer it. And the CSM feels like they are prepared and equipped and enabled to get that answer. So both parties are set up to succeed. The challenge that you see in so many businesses, though, is that neither party is set up to succeed. The customers don't really know how to articulate it. And then you've got CSMs who ask, well, what's your goal? And then when no one can answer it, it's like, this is the common response I see in here. Okay, well, why don't you take that back internally? You guys figure it out. And then when you have your goal, you can share it with us. And guess what never gets shared? The goal. And then what do? We continue on the journey with the partnership. And then what happens? Somebody gets to a EBR or QBR milestone in the journey, and then everyone panics because no one had a goal documented. We were doing all this work and nobody actually knows if any of that work was of value. So if you're not doing this up front and if you're not investing that time, everything you do from that point on is garbage. It's a waste. It's a waste of time. You don't know. Right? If I told you to get in your car and go, Kristi, where am I going? How am I supposed to get there? Do I have gas in the car? Like, you're not asking any questions, right? And it's the same thing. If I can't just get in my car and drive and expect to get to a destination. You have a map, right? You have directions. I've got Waze telling me that there's a car accident. Don't take that highway. This road is closed. All of those things happen. So you have to be that for your customers, and you have to guide them very prescriptively so we know where we're going and how to get there.
Love it. Kristi, let me ask you this question, and I know I don't think this sits on your side of the house. As a seller, which is 30 years of what I've been doing, sometimes I feel in the sales process, if I presented 7 value props, it'd be analysis paralysis. Oh, let's get this person in, and all of a sudden I have too many people in the room trying to make a decision, and they don't know what value prop to go off of. Are your sellers selling one value prop? And then when they meet with you as a CS team, then you're giving them a more expansive view? How do you make sure that the seller and the CS team, when that handoff takes place, or CS and onboarding to CS, or however it works, is something that you're set up for success? Did you have any suggestions on that? And again, I don't know if this is in your realm or not.
Yeah, no, I have a bunch of suggestions, right? I also have like my reality versus like what I would love to get to do at some point, right? Like they're always a little different. And listen, every leader has their thoughts on it, right? So like, how do we just come together and find something that we can kind of coexist with? So what our sales team does is they're currently having that conversation with their customers. They are nailing down, I think, some of the pain points for their customers. And then what happens is in that knowledge transfer, even if our sales team gives us 2 or 3 and says like, these are some of the pain points that they're experiencing, what my team will do is then take those and map them to one of the 7. And so when we go to our partnership kickoff meeting, what we say is, based off of your conversations in sales, based off of the survey that you completed before we got started, here's our understanding of the areas of focus and prioritization for your business. Let's take a couple minutes and review that to make sure that we have this correct. And so we'll have on a slide what we heard and kind of like the buckets of like, again, we'll have those 7 core objectives. Here's what we heard. Here's where those things fall in. And when you see it under the umbrella of those 7, they start to gut check themselves. And they're like, oh, well, actually, no, that's not the biggest priority. That over there is. And so again, I don't really care what happens from sales and even what's collected. I want my customer to have that moment of being like, no, this is the top priority for me. So I'm okay with sales handling it that way and us doing some mapping, because really what it does is it allows us to facilitate a really good conversation and dialogue with our customer, and almost allowing them to have a realization that what maybe they said isn't what they meant. And that happens a lot, right? How many times do you have somebody who thinks that they know why they're there, And then they find out very quickly after they know a little bit more about your software or a little bit about their problems that it's a little bit different, or what they want to start with is different, and that's okay. So I actually am okay with them not being pigeonholed into one thing, because maybe we don't get to move as fast out the gate. I am learning more, and my customers feel more confident that what we're doing is the right work.
I got to say, I love that, because I talk to a lot of customer success professionals who oftentimes blame sales for setting them up poorly.
That's because everyone wants to blame everybody else.
Right. But you've just
that's not a sales and success thing. I mean, that's like everyone wants to blame somebody else for something that is wrong in their life. And that's not even like a SaaS thing. That's like a life thing. Everyone wants to be like,
therapy,
like a
Kristi,
victim
doing
playing.
it.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
And listen, if I was in sales, if I was my sales leader, would I do it differently? Yes, but I'm not. And so I have to respect the fact that I have a partner in another organization who has obviously been put in that position. Who am I to disempower them or tell them that what they're saying is wrong? No, but how do we coexist and ultimately just get to what the customer needs? I don't care how we get there. I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. We can collaborate. We can agree, we can disagree. At the end of the day, as long as I'm getting to what I need with the customer, we kind of got to check our egos and stop worrying about like the how do we get here, be happy that we did, and move on. So listen, sales is going to do what they got to do to close the deals, and that's okay. Like at the end of the day, I'm a business leader, which means I'm here for the business success. So I know that if I'm helping my customers be successful, the business is successful. Sales knows that if they're closing deals, they're helping the business be successful. We've just got to figure out behind the scenes. It's like the Oz, right? Like nobody should see what's behind the curtain. It shouldn't be your customer's fault, and it shouldn't be anyone's experience. It should just be, did we get what we needed to get? Go.
Todd, we have to have Kristi do one more rant, and I wish she was more passionate about it. We're going to have to maybe get some more passion out of her. I mean, like when you do the edits, if you could improve that for her.
I'm going to work on it.
You seem a little too subdued, you know.
But Kristi, you got to give everybody your take about when your customer calls your CS person and says, I'm having problems. There's a bug in your software. There's an issue I'm running into. And then, of course, on cue, the CS person says, oh my gosh, I've had so many customers complain, right? That's the right answer?
That is absolutely the wrong. So I did a post on this recently. So anybody who's following me on LinkedIn, you can go find it. I also have a TikTok video on it. The one thing I will die on this hill, right? There's a few hills I'll die on. This is one of them. You should never commiserate with your customers. I always say at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what role you play in the company. You need to be your company and your product and your brand's biggest advocate. You do not need to commiserate to build empathy. Okay? Your customer comes to you and they are having a bad experience. It is your responsibility to acknowledge it. It is your responsibility to understand what the experience is. It's your responsibility to document it. It's your experience to bring it to the right people to get it solved. It is not your job, though, to sit there and be like, oh my God, you're right. That sucks. Why didn't product fix it? Who let that get through QA? I can't believe that. Everyone hates it. I hate it. Bob hates it. Like, wrong conversation to have. A real professional knows that that is not how you handle that conversation. Get the information you need, demonstrate empathy by understanding and listening, then get it fixed. Get it fixed. That's the best thing you could do for your customer. Sitting there and bitching and moaning with them, that is not the right approach. Do not do that. Please get the information you need. Apologize for the experience they're having. Sometimes it's also user error also. Like, let's not forget that it's not always the product. Sometimes we don't know how to use technology. Get the information and move it on. Oh my God. No, I hate it when people do that. Oh,
I would die on that hill also. And that's why I feel like sometimes a playbook and even the term customer success, I feel puts our people in a mindset that I need to solve everybody's problem.
It's like I have to say yes to everything. Yes. And I did something on this too. Like, no is a full sentence and it's an acceptable one. And do not feel like because you're talking to a customer that you can't say no. Oftentimes saying yes actually sets you back. It actually will do a disservice to the partnership, the relationship, right? Oh, I need this product built. Yes, we're going to build that. Are you kidding me? Have you seen how long the roadmap list is? Like, you're not getting in there until 2026. But a CSM wants to say yes. They think that by saying yes, by giving the customer what they want all the time, by doing all those, by commiserating, they think that is the appropriate way to build a relationship. And I will tell you, it is the complete opposite. but that's the behaviors of an immature. And I say like not immature as in like young, but like somebody who's just not mature in the role, right? You haven't been doing it long enough to know better. And you've got leaders that aren't paying attention to that behavior. Because if I heard that, I'd be coaching on that day one.
Right. One of my favorite questions that I consult with is just ask the question. If someone says, "Oh God, we're having poor adoption. We're having this. We're having that." Well, how do you suppose we're going to change that? Like this is a you issue. I don't know what's going on in your environment. I don't know what you've communicated out to your users. I don't know what education you've done with your users. I have no idea what's taking place. So how do you suppose you're going to fix this? And I'm going to give you best practices of what I've seen that's going to fix this. But what are you going to do? And I love that take. When I read that, I was like, spot on. That's what we're talking about, is accountability on every level. And the teams that are the best hold everyone accountable. But they hold them in
this is a partnership.
You go out the door, right?
Two ways. Yep. And like I said, unfortunately, we've gotten to a place where customer success has now positioned themselves poorly in these relationships. And that's the behavior we're seeing as a result of it. And it's a shame because that's not how it should be, right? Like I am not like, I could give my customer tools, I can help them. But at the end of the day, change management has to come within the organization. I cannot be driving it as their third-party vendor, right? I'm like 8 steps too many removed. But people buy technology not thinking about the change that is required in order for that to be well adopted and to actually have the impact they believe it can and will have. You also have the issue of people buying technology thinking that that's going to be the solve to their problems. And that's my biggest issue. I'll tell you, like being in customer success software, people don't have a customer success strategy. They come in, they purchase the software, they think the software is the strategy. I'm like, oh, no. We're not the car. We're like the engine in the car, but like, you gotta have a car first, right? Like there's parts of it that you have to have beforehand that we can help orchestrate, but we're not the whole thing. And that's a challenge for a lot of, I think, different spaces where you've got immature buyers who just don't know, and they think that technology will fix everything.
Kristi, it's interesting because I think, so I mean, obviously Brainstorm is a software company. We struggle from these same problems that so many SaaS companies do. You work for a SaaS company that obviously has to face and see these with many of your customers too. I wonder if maybe it would be helpful to dive into maybe a little bit of a practical conversation around best practices. So I actually am loving this conversation, so I hate to move it along, but I also want to make sure that we jump into some really meaty, just like maybe what your opinion is for best practices in certain scenarios. So as an example, maybe a starting point would be when it comes to onboarding, how quickly do you think CS needs to be brought into the conversation, and what should that first conversation look like with the customer?
Okay, so I think that somebody on the customer success side or somebody in the post-sale organization, because right, there's different roles and titles in every business. Somebody in the post-sales business should be introduced same day. Deal is closed, deal is signed, somebody is introduced. It may be 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours before you can get a meeting booked because of everyone's schedules, but you should be working as quickly as possible to, one, respond to the email introduction. That should be within a few hours. So I always say within the first 24 hours, an introduction should be sent and a response should have been made from the person who is being introduced. From there, you're looking to book the first meeting as quickly as possible. Now, I do not jump into onboarding. So let me be very clear. The first conversation we have a customer is what we refer to as our partnership kickoff. And the reason why I don't jump into onboarding is because onboarding is very tactical. It's tactical and it's technical. And what you do is you're missing an opportunity to engage the executive stakeholder who just signed a contract and have them be a part of that dialogue, understanding what partnership success will look like for them, setting proper expectations on both sides, really having a dialogue around what are we embarking on together. So I use that partnership kickoff call. It allows us to level set on a whole bunch of things. Again, expectations, introductions. What does onboarding look like? What does success look like for them? What do we expect of them? What do they expect of us? The who's who in the zoo, right? You get the whole org stuff. We get to have that business discussion up front. Then we go into onboarding. And we do try to transition into onboarding very quickly, but that partnership kickoff meeting, that's instrumental to our success. We don't have that. If you go right into onboarding, you miss so many things and you're just jumping into solving. It's like solving a problem you don't even know you have. So we make sure that those things happen first. We do try to get to onboarding very quick. Our first onboarding plan meeting, though, is about planning. Now, this is where I said, I go back to like those 7 business objectives that we had. Once we knew what they chose coming out of that partnership kickoff, now we're designing their plan. This is where, again, I have that plate and I got that buffet with all of those hot dishes. What food do I want on here? This is where, again, we're spooning it in. We're filling our plate now. So maybe a little chicken, a little mac and cheese, a little cornbread. That's fine. I'm starving. So you make your plate, and now you're working off of your plan for the rest of onboarding. But now you have a plan, right? You have a goal, you know what you're working towards, you have something to measure, and you can keep things going in a way that will help you drive success. So breaking it down so simply, that's how I'm focusing on onboarding, at least getting some initial success and engagement properly with your customers.
I mean, of course, I expected it to be a great answer, and it was, and it involved food, which is also great.
Again, it's 5:18 here on the East Coast, so this is dinner time. So you got me talking about food. I am dreaming about yummies. So
so good. So on this point, I think it's a really I really like your point about this partner kickoff, because I think so often the problem with the onboarding conversation is most of the time it feels draining to the customer to think, because again, they're projecting around all the things we have to do, but it's all very, it's not just technical. It's it's kind of boring, right? It's not exciting. Yeah. I think the visionary conversation is way more intriguing to the customer overall. So I guess
it's interesting, right? Though, but think about it. You have an executive who just signed a contract. Now, if you're somebody if your product is expensive and you have somebody who just signed, let's just say a 6-figure deal, maybe it's a 7-figure deal, who knows? And now you didn't take a moment to have a conversation with them. Then you want to come back at the quarterly or 6-month or the renewal conversation. And then you want to know why they're not a part of that conversation. They were never a part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They were never part of it. They were part of the sales process, but they were never part of that post-sales experience. And so it really kills me when people are like, oh, I don't know why they're engaged. They're not engaged. They were never engaged. They were part of the sales process. And if you break up your journey into different parts and you do not engage them as your first conversation post-sales, you never had them engaged. And so I hate when people are like, oh, the executive is no longer engaged. No, the executive was never engaged. So it's having some realizations like that. And that's why I get really hung up on certain meetings and milestones, and I prioritize them, because you miss simple opportunities by just not thinking things through and moving too fast. And that's why that time to value trips people up, because you're hung up on a date and saying oh, I have 6 weeks. I got to move quick. I got to go get all these things done. You miss meaningful milestones. You miss opportunities to land value and have the right discussions because we're moving to arbitrary timelines. So sorry, Todd, I know you were going to take this somewhere else, but I had to reinforce that because I think it's so important.
Well, we've already established, Kristi, that you are not a passionate person. You take a very wholesome approach to this stuff.
I'm a hungry person. So I figure if I give you guys a good conversation, I eat sooner.
You are right. Okay, so just maybe one last question before we dive to our final question that we always ask, which is you mentioned it's really important to think through in the customer journey the most important milestones and touch points. We've already established a few. Are there any other, if you could just say there's one other major touch point or two major other touch points that you need to make sure you don't miss in the onboarding journey, what would those be?
Okay, so this is one that I started doing at ClientSuccess. I hadn't done this prior, and it was a game changer for me as a leader and for our customers. I have an automation rule, and I always talk about it very transparently with my customers. It's an automation that goes out to my executive stakeholder and all my customers 45 days into the partnership. Not 60, not 90, not 120, not at a QBR or an EBR, 45 days. And the reason why, it's given them enough time to experience some time with my team, my product, and understanding how this fits into their organization. So 45 days, an automated email goes out. I have a conversation. It's just, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I hope onboarding has been going well. I would love an opportunity to align with you on these things. It gives them 4 bullet points as far as an agenda of what I want to cover. Happy to discuss anything that's top of mind for you. Here's my booking link. Go book it. I have a 96% booking rate on that email. Okay. Almost every customer that gets that email books a meeting with me. And I get an opportunity as the executive to now introduce myself. I get to hear what's going well, what challenges are happening. And I'm not waiting 6 months into the partnership. I'm not waiting until something is escalated to me. The first conversation I get to have with them feels proactive and it's on my terms. Very rarely does an executive get that opportunity. What happens is we meet customers always at our worst. It's always when something is escalated. And I tell my team this all the time. I'm like, if the first conversation I have with your customer is an escalation, I'm going to kill you. I'm never going to kill them. But I'm going to be so mad because that's not how I want to meet somebody. Nobody wants to meet for the first time under those circumstances. I don't want to have to go and like, it's so off-putting for everybody, right? I'm going to come in here and like try to save the day. You don't even know me. But when you have a pre-existing relationship, when you have something that you can go off of, it changes the entire dynamic. And so that milestone, it seems simple, it seems small, it feels trivial. It changes everything for the partnerships. And it doesn't have to be me. It could be another stakeholder. It could be whomever the manager. If you've got layers of leadership, that's fine. Client success, we're not huge. So for me, I like to have that meeting. But whether it's Dave, our CEO, whether it's me, an executive to engage 45 days in changes everything. So that would be, I would say, the second or probably third big milestone for us in the partnership as far as onboarding is concerned.
And what's amazing is that is a novel idea that I would guess many people have not even considered. That's why you're amazing.
And it's
Kristi.
so easy. And if you have technology to automate that, like you're not even doing any work.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, even if you don't have technology, have your just create a template, right? And it's a copy paste job. Have your CSM send it to you, put something on your calendar. Like there's ways to make it lightweight for the executives so they don't feel like it's a heavy burden to them if you don't have technology to do it. And I always say that we get so hung up on like, oh, well, I don't have software to do this, or, oh, it's a manual task. We need to stop thinking like that. There are ways to drive efficiency and make things easier, but we underestimate the value of something like that. And I'd rather put 15 minutes behind that task and have the impact it has than to say, I'm not going to do it because it takes too much time in my day. Executives prioritize the wrong things.
Kristi, you've been amazing. We've loved having you on with us today. This has felt just like a therapy session, and every good therapy session.
I feel better.
Yeah. Right. But every good therapy session ends with a piece of homework. So if you could give our listeners any piece of homework from today, what would that be?
Can I give 3?
Sure.
I'm giving
it's a prescription. You're going to give them a full plan.
Right. I'm going to give them 3 things. I'm going to give you 3 things. Go evaluate 3 things we're going to just stick to onboarding. If I ever come back and we get to do beyond onboarding, we'll have that conversation.
Yes.
1, make sure that you are doing a partnership kickoff. You have some kind of executive conversation that is not tactical. Please stop jumping into onboarding out the gate. 2, make sure that you're getting a way to get to your customers' goals. Give your CSMs guidance and frameworks that will help them help their customers get there. But the absence of articulating a smart goal, and I have to stress that because I've seen some goals that are not good and not measurable and not attainable. So a smart goal up front, because anything you do without that is in vain. You're wasting everyone's time. And the third thing is create that simple workflow of having your executives reach out and start to establish relationships early in those partnerships. Does not have to be with all of your customers. If you can only prioritize the top 50, do the top 50. If you can only prioritize top 100, figure out which ones. It does not have to be all of them, but make sure it's some of them, and figure it out. And perhaps, listen, maybe it's only the customers where the first 45 days not seem to be going as well, right? Maybe you've got some signals that say, onboarding's okay. It could be better. Something's signaling to us that it's not great. Use those accounts. Whatever it is, figure out the criteria, but start to prioritize that motion. I promise you won't regret it. Best use of your time.
Great advice, Kristi. I feel like we need to put some clickbait in the title. 3 ways that'll transform your business. Number 3 will shock you, and it's going to be amazing. So, Kristi, you've been a delight. Thank you so much for joining us today. And man, we can't wait to have you back. We need to continue that.
Thanks, guys. It did feel like therapy. It delivered what you guys promised. So I appreciate that. I think we come back and we do another part of the journey, though. This was great. I love the onboarding now.
Thank you,
I'm all for it. Thank you so much, Kristi. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.